Hey, we're on time! Can you believe it? No Name Cinema Society. It's our classic discussion of the evening, our most popular portion of the evening, and my favorite, of course. And hi, my name is Jonathan Betzler, as you can see right here. And as you can see right here, our movie for discussion is... I'll never get the screen back the way I want it. It's The Lion of Winter. So yeah, I'm very excited to talk about that. And before we go on, I want to also say a special thank you and welcome to our all the fans that I met at the TCM Fest this past weekend. I went to TCM Fest, saw a bunch of movies, and met a lot of you fans out there that sometimes watch our show. So we appreciate that. At least I think I'm speaking for Davey and J Money and saying we appreciate your patronage and keep watching and let us know what you think, feedback. And those of you that I took pictures with, feel free to tweet us with those pictures. I don't have copies of them. I'd love to put them on the show at some point. Anyway, with that said, let me introduce. We got a royal show and we got a couple of hosts here. Let's start with King J Money, the hater from Brooklyn. J Money.
That's what's up. I am from Brooklyn and I do hate, but not indiscriminately, JB. Not indiscriminately.
Of course, of course. And also, King Davie, the drunk of Charlotte.
Oh, God. All right. What's up, man?
That's Drunk Davie, everybody. You know, living up to his nickname as usual. Here's where we are in terms of the night's schedule, as you can probably see. So we've already talked about Keanu. We had, I think, a pretty interesting discussion of the dead. Do you guys feel good about the last show?
Hell yeah.
That's awesome. Real good.
Okay. And now it's time for The Lion in Winter. And let's see, what have I got here? I think this is what I want. Let's see. It is what I want. Perfect. So, yeah, that's what we got going on now. Now, the trivia. It's time for trivia for the evening. And we had 3 little bits of trivia regarding The Lion in Winter. The first one, which I mentioned on the broadcast last time when we talked about Goodfellas, was that this is historically there have been 2 ties in the acting category in Oscar history, and this was the most recent one, the second and most recent one, in which Katharine Hepburn won for Lion in Winter, tying with Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl. So that was the last tie, and that was clearly in 1968. Second time, this was the Facebook trivia question, was the first. This was the first of 6 times in which the DGA award winner did not match the Best Director winner. And I ask this question every year at my Oscar party, and very few people ever get it right. Anthony Harvey, the director of Lion in Winter, won Best Director at the DGA award, but failed to win the Oscar. That went to Carol Reed for Oliver! And that was in 1968 as well. And that's the first time it ever happened that the DGA award didn't match. And the third little tidbit that came up in discussion was younger audiences might recognize the plot of this particular movie because a modern television show has ripped it off rather shamelessly. The television show Empire takes the whole plot of this movie and play and created a television show out of it. Now, at least they acknowledge it to some degree by naming their family in question Lion, Lyon, in the show Empire. But it bothers me a little bit in the sense that these audiences don't know that this movie that Empire is not completely original. Do you guys watch Empire by chance?
I do.
I don't.
You do. All right,
I don't, but now I kind of want to.
No, it's pretty awesome. It's awesome. You should watch it.
The fact that Davey likes it means that you don't want to watch it. Anyway, so the plot in this incarnation is it's Christmas time in medieval England, 1183 to be exact, and for the holiday, King Henry II has released his wife, Eleanor of Aquitaine, from prison so they can renew their annual battle over which of their 3 sons will succeed to the throne upon Henry's death. I assume, now, has either of you guys seen this movie before?
No.
First time? I love introducing these guys to these movies. Who goes first? Davey, opening thoughts.
I liked it a lot. I have one major quibble that we'll get to, I'm sure. But I do like the movie a lot, although it's marred by one thing.
Okay, and J Money.
I fucking loved it.
And for me, it's top 20 all time. So this is big. So J Money and I are in concert here, and I'm so excited that you've never seen before, and you effing loved it. I'm trying to refrain from the language myself. So that excites me. That excites me because I wasn't sure how you feel about it. Here's a picture of the screening that we had. You might recognize that apartment. We had an 82-minute discussion about this movie. It was really intense. There was a lot of enjoyment in the movie from the group at the screening, but there was also a great amount of confusion and lots of different interpretations. That's where I want to start. And I mean, the question that kept coming up during that issue, like, is the question of motivation. That's the word that kept coming up because there was a lot of questions as to what characters' motivations were, and a lot of confusion along those lines. So my first question is, I mean, and I wound up having to explain. I don't want to sound like a teacher, but I guess I was defending the movie or offering what my interpretation was, and that there was a lot of tangents along those lines. I felt like I had to explain the whole Plantagenet line, but in spite of that, do you guys have any confusion? Because that kept coming up in our conversation at the screening.
I mean, I don't think I do, but now you're making me wonder if I didn't pick up on something or.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I think some of these folks may have like overanalyzed it or whatever, but I'll get to their specific questions. But I want to see if Davey has anything that he wasn't.
No, I don't. I mean, I may find out that I'm wrong about something, but for the most part, I thought the story was, for as complex as it was pretty coherent.
Well, the main thing that, and I would say this actually frustrated people, is the question was, why John? Why was he fighting so hard for John to be king? Henry II, was angling for John. Eleanor here is angling for Richard, played by young Anthony Hopkins. Who knew he was ever that young? So that was a major frustration for the audience members. Like they just and every time it came up, they felt like it was a hole in the plot. So any issues along those lines for you guys?
That's actually a really good question. I don't know. I just kind of went with it. I'm sure you can tell us exactly what the motivation was there.
Well, I mean, it's in the text. It's there in the movie. I mean, like maybe it requires a little bit of. I mean, I've seen it many times. I used to own it, but then I lent it to somebody, and that was the end of that. But J Money, do you have an interpretation of why Henry II really pushes for John in this movie?
Well, first off, I mean, isn't half of him pushing for John as much a ruse to sort of play off the other people in his family and to gain control over them?
Oh, that's part of it, but he's got these 3 sons to choose from, and yeah. Are you suggesting that you don't think he wanted John to be king?
No, it's not that. I just think from a practical point of view, John was probably the easiest one to keep under his thumb after he passes on the torch in some ways, and also the easiest one for him to control or to. The phrase
I used in the discussion was, a mound of clay. He was a little bit blind as to just how stupid John was.
Right.
But at the same time, that's more or less my interpretation as well. And the other thing that you have to remember, and they do talk about this in the text again, is there was a 4th son. The first son was Henry III,
right,
and he died. Not that young either. I think he was late teens, and he was being groomed to be king. And by the time Henry III had died, Richard was already sort of Eleanor's boy. I mean, and there's this whole sequence where he's like, Richard's like, Daddy, why wasn't I the one? And he's like, well, right. Henry was supposed to be the one, and then right. Like, why not after? And he's like, you're already Eleanor's, and so they address that. Does that clear things up for you?
Yeah.
David?
Yeah. No, it does, and that's kind of what I was trying to go with the weaker guy. He could mold him probably.
The other major question that kept coming up. not so much a question, but there was a lot of debate and discussion and analysis of the relationship between Henry and Eleanor. How would you guys characterize this relationship?
I mean, I think
It's
it
unique,
was
at least, right?
absolutely, and it was just so great to watch. I mean, it was just completely unpredictable and just amazingly well written dialogue. You never knew where it was going, so I
Well, I
loved
mean,
it.
but from a character point of view, like, how would you assess their relationship? Like, do they love each other? Like, what are like what is going on there? What's the undercurrent?
It's definitely it's a love-hate deal. I mean, it's
Aaron, Davey says definitely. J Money, do you got anything?
Sexual adversaries. They really wanted to bone down, and yet at the same time they couldn't give themselves over to each other. But underlying that tension, there was a lot of love and a lot of anger at the same time.
And a lot of history, and I mean, like, and it's almost, you also get the impression that, Henry's a man, like, Eleanor gets old, and Henry's like, he's not attracted to her anymore, and then there was a whole issue of Rosamund as well.
Right.
All right, so good to know your guys' interpretations on that. Davey, before we get to the next thing, let's go to your question, because maybe it falls in this category of things that could potentially be confusing.
Oh, you mean my quibble? Can you put that picture back up again? The first one that you because it speaks.
Which was the first one?
It was the three of them standing there. It's got Anthony Hopkins in the middle.
There's four of them in that shot, but sure. But do you want to? Yeah.
So while you're pulling that up, it's medieval times, okay, and they're in a castle, and there are like torches, one would think, to give light, and it's too damn bright all the time. They're in a dungeon, and it's brighter than the surface of the sun. If you look at this picture right now, you can see a light bulb shining in the back of his head. It's absurd, and it's distracting, and they could have done. It didn't have to be that way, guys. It didn't have to be that way. It's other than that, I love the movie, but come on, back me up here. I'm right about this.
I mean, we watched it. I think their screening was October 26th, so nobody mentioned it, and I certainly. I mean, I've seen it a number of times. It's never really bothered me. I mean, like, there are a number of scenes with fires in it that, where I feel like people are lit by the fire. Certainly, that dungeon scene is anything but bright.
Oh, dude, it's way too bright, though. I mean, it's not dark. It's not dark.
Let's see here. I mean, these pictures are old, so who knows? But let's see what we got here. With this is the dungeon.
That's a dungeon. I mean, is that sun in there? I mean, like, I don't know.
What is this sun you're talking about? Gee, I don't know. This seems like. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of like Hollywood artifice, but not enough for me to really object. J Money.
I guess I'll split the difference between you two. First off, though, we have to add it's too damn bright to Davy Joe's list of general critique. Too damn bright. We have
to, Davy, do you want to comment on the color palette?
I liked it. It was good. I mean, and the sets are great too. I mean, look, this is a great movie. I'm trying to say it's not, but the whole time I was like, why is it so bright? It's too bright.
I didn't think that it was too bright, but I understand what you're saying. I think there was a certain level of unnaturalness to the lighting, which made it a little flatter. But I also feel like that's also movie craft in 1968, perhaps. I mean, I also feel like they were up against the odds in certain places they were shooting. I mean, it didn't bother me. Let me put it that way. But I guess I kind of see some of what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like, I sort of agree with what Jay Money said. It didn't really bother me. Like, I sort of accept it, and like, I'm so engaged in the story that I don't really think. The other thing that came up a lot during the screening was, from a positive point of view, and I think this is what everybody agreed was their favorite thing about the movie, is the dialogue.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And David Joe, like they said, they just wanted to write it down. It was super sharp. Do you guys have a favorite line that you remember? You guys just watched it.
I mean, honestly, I wish I had written things down. I remember thinking that I laughed out loud in my apartment so many times on my own. while watching this movie, and it's almost like, yeah, I really wish I should go back and just sort of catalog all these different great one-liners, all these really great sort of cutting, rapacious remarks that are thrown back and forth constantly.
And there was the one where he's like, I know that you know that I know that you, and it was just like, and it went
and then he says, we're a knowledgeable family.
Yeah, but it was awesome. Like, it was really good.
Oh man, there's just so much good, sarcastic, cynical humor. It's just.
So I got two for you guys. One is, Eleanor here says, I adored you, I still do. Then he says, of all the lies you told, that's the most horrible. She says, I know, that's why I saved it till now. and then another really great line that I think is really important is, in terms of defining what we talked about with the John thing, he actually says, why ask, and he's referring to John, using a metaphor, he says, why ask if the air is good if there's nothing else to breathe?
Great line.
I mean, like, it's not only a clever line, it's functional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, so the next topic is, and something that we did not get to as much in the screening, but that I didn't want to leave it out now, is performances. I'm going to sit here, and I've said this a long time, and when we talked about Misery in the 1990 show, I said we're going to have another. I said that Kathy Bates' performance in Misery was one of the top 5 best female performances ever, and I said we've got another one coming up soon. Katharine Hepburn, kids, is on that list for me. Top 5 best performances all time by a female in this movie. I mean, like, it is earth-shatteringly good. We talked how good Jessica Chastain was in The Debt. This is another level. It's 2 other levels. So that's my statement. What do you guys think?
I mean, it was perfect. I mean, part of it's that she had amazing material, but she couldn't have done it any better. I'll say that.
Okay, J-Mike?
It occurred to me while watching this movie that it must have been such an amazing sort of emotional workout for everybody involved in this movie. But I mean, the two matriarchs, well, the two heads of the family, basically, O'Toole and her, have to do so much acrobatic work with the dialogue, with their emotional states, with everything they're playing up against, and it's just amazing to watch. It's absolutely amazing to watch them keep it together and make it so enjoyable and so just memorable. I was really blown away.
I mean, obviously, it's a great role. I mean, Stockard Channing won a Tony for it about 15 years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, and then Glenn Close was nominated for a Tony for it more recently than that. But I don't know. I mean, like, audited against everything else, like, I understand what you're saying about it's a great role, but it's still, she brings so much to this table. You know what I mean? Like, it's a good role, but it's a challenging role. You know what I mean? Like, it's a lot of words. It requires a lot of wit.
That's what I'm saying.
And sharp turns, just sharp turns, like on a dime.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a great point, Davey. Probably the best you've ever made on this show.
Thank you.
What about Peter O'Toole? Now, little tidbit alert. Peter O'Toole played the same role, Henry II, in a movie called Becket 4 years earlier, in which he played Becket as a younger person. He played, he played Henry II, who had Becket assassinated, for those who don't know your British history. He played Henry II in his 20s and 30s. Now he's playing Henry II as a 50-year-old, just 4 years later. Little tidbit about Peter O'Toole there. Talk to me about Peter.
I mean, again, I would echo sentiments about what we just talked about in terms of Katharine Hepburn. I thought it was interesting in terms of, I guess I was amazed to find out that I think he's only 36 when he plays this role.
That's correct.
Which is amazing. It was amazing to see him adopt the personality and the weight and gravitas of a king towards the end of his life, especially up against Katharine Hepburn, who was, I think, 62 or 63. And for them to feel equally weighted.
Movie after the death of Spencer Tracy.
Well, that's it's amazing. I mean, I was blown away by O'Toole when we talked about Lawrence of Arabia about a year ago, but this is also, I mean, this is the tops for me right now.
And he was nominated for an Academy Award. Obviously, she won. He lost to Cliff Robertson, who some of you who may know as Uncle Ben from the Tobey Maguire Batman, Spider-Mans.
Okay.
Cliff Robinson won for playing a guy named Charlie. The movie's called Charlie, and he had some mental disabilities. I don't remember exactly what they were. So, all right, talk to me about these other performances, maybe. Supporting performances. What do you guys think?
Davy Joe.
I think performances across the board were fantastic. As far as I don't think there's any weak links here. Maybe JB's got one, but I thought I was.
The audience really disliked John. I was gonna say. But in fairness, that's how the character is written.
No, he was like kind of like this kind of Igor thing going on that I thought that was you can't. Everyone's got he's a little different. I mean, everyone's shouldn't be the same, right?
But it's so hammy. I mean, honestly, I guess it's a credit to the movie that it didn't really change my opinion of the movie on a whole. But his performance specifically, it felt so cartoonish compared to everything else that was happening. And I really wondered why or how that came to be. I didn't know if it was because that was the intent, that was the direction, or that was his choice.
Definitely the intent. Anytime you see a performance of this on stage or an adaptation, that's basically how it's performed.
Huh.
It's very much a part of the text.
I liked it. I thought it was because it also kind of it kind of plays into the whole Richard's just absolute bafflement and like why how it's just
absolutely and that's the intention. And also there's an element of history there too. Like there's a lot of text suggests that he was a bit of a like if you look at the way he's framed too, he's often framed amongst animals at animal level. Like there's animal, like there's pigs behind him at certain points in the frame.
Oh, that's such a hilarious scene too. That scene.
Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's move on to because here's the thing. One of the hardest things to do is filming something that was meant for a play. Like how do you open it up? How do you make it work? There's two things I think this movie does that makes it work. One is the editing, interscene editing, and the other is blocking for the camera. And they're not entirely disconnected, but the audience had some issues with the editing, and I'm going to play that for you now.
When they're having like the first scene with Henry and Eleanor, and they just do like these different cuts of like they're eating porridge and they're on the parapets and like it's the same conversation, but they cut it up.
Oh, it's Alice. It was Henry and Alice.
Oh, Henry and Alice. Yeah, I was like, wow.
Okay, so what do you guys? Oh, I meant to be on you guys for that. What do you guys think about that?
Could you recap? Because I could only hear it.
Oh, you couldn't hear it, David. Could you hear it?
I could, but we'll go ahead and recap it. I'm not.
Go ahead and recap because I couldn't hear it well. Is what I want to say.
He basically said that he didn't like how there's this expositional scene between Henry and Alice, and basically it's one conversation and it's them eating, and then they have they're cut somewhere else in the same conversation, but they're somewhere else supposedly like an hour later. It's as if they were like, okay, stop let's talk about this later, and they pick it up without missing a step an hour later somewhere else. So he felt like that was kind of contrived, and I just wanted to get your guys' response to that.
Yeah, I'll concede that point. It certainly didn't take away from me at the time. I read it as there being like a conversation that had been going on for I think months, because I think at that point there had been a fair amount of distance between him talking to her initially and them going through with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's definitely one of those moments where like they try to use cinematic license just to spice things up and to make things a little more active, and maybe they forced it a little bit too much there. I can definitely acknowledge that. It's one of those things that didn't bother me. Maybe I've got a blind spot as far as this movie is concerned. I don't know, but it was a fair point, and I wanted to bring it up. David, do you have a thought about it?
It is a good point. It didn't bother me at the time. It may start to. It's fair though. It's good. It's good. It's a good observation.
Davey, how do you feel about the editing overall? My point about the editing making a difference here.
I don't know. It's great, and I think the fact that they kind of let things go and unfold and play out. It's not something that I think we get to see much today. So I like the movie a lot. I like the way that
you
it's
see
done.
my point too. I mean, like, because the person who was at the screening, their issue was more of. Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Their issue is more of the editing of the movie, whereas I'm talking about mainly like the intra-scene editing, the way that the movie works within these individual scenes, not relying too much on wide shots, which a lot of play adaptations can tend to do. I think that, like moving very fluidly between over the shoulders, close-ups, two shots, and also, blocking them around as much, which we're about to get to.
Yeah, rather than cuts, I noticed that they followed
You understand the
around.
difference in the editing, in the basically two different arts of editing? Like, there's the editing where you're sort of piecing the movie together and the structure of it, and then there's the editing within the scenes.
Yeah, I noticed that rather than a lot of cuts, that they would follow them around, which I kind of liked. I like that. Like I said, I think it's something we don't get to see much today. So it was kind of a treat.
Yeah, long takes aren't, because of ever since MTV in 1981, like things are more cutty, and so this uses a lot of camera movement, which leads us to the next point about blocking for camera, which I think this movie excels at, and it just helps elevate it to being more than just a play adaptation. Like, it's something that, and that's why I think Anthony Harvey did such a good job, is it's really a challenge to make this cinematic, and I feel like it was, in spite of its lengthy dialogue and, not a lot of set variation. And I already talked about how it didn't rely on masters. Some of the audience at my screening felt like it was movement for movement's sake. How do you guys respond to that?
No, I personally don't have that feeling about it. I mean, I thought it felt a little light on its feet, but I also feel like it certainly, look, it was so invested in close-ups and so invested in really getting the characters up into your face, which seemed really important for this for the dialogue specifically.
Completely agree. And it worked really well, and they didn't linger on those close-ups too long, I don't think.
No.
Like, they saved them for the right moments. So that's why it's a combination of the editing and the blocking for camera that we were talking about earlier. J Money, Davey Joe, it sounds like you don't agree with this movement for movement's sake thing either.
No, I don't. I don't agree, and I can see. I guess I could see where you could get that impression, but to me, it all seemed to service the story. It didn't seem to be gratuitous.
For sure, and I mean, like, the audience was sort of split on this. Others said that it's one made a note that he felt like there was a lot of zooms in the beginning, and as the movie went along, it transitioned to more dolly type stuff. More fluid camera movement, because the zoom is an artificial representation of space, right? So when you actually move the camera, that's not artificial representation of space. Spatial relations I'm talking about. So the movie transitions to more like pans and tilts and dollies, which is what Davey Joe was talking about earlier. But the other thing that they get from that, and the other art of blocking for the camera, is actually like where to move them within a frame. And maybe the person that was saying movement for movement's sake was referring to this, and people landed exactly where they needed to the frame. It never felt forced to me, but I guess it did to them. And here is the diopter shot that back-to-back weeks with diopter shots. The previous one was in Dangerous Method from the Indie from May, whenever we did our last show, mid-April. So anyway, this is the diopter shot, and like, this is one of the things, like, okay, so Henry lands exactly where he needs to, with sunlight coming in apparently, and Davey calls it sunlight coming in from the outside, and apparently, she's lit by a 5K here while she's sleeping. But,
Right.
No,
It's bothering you now.
Not really at all. I'm making fun of you. But anyway, I don't mind this diopter shot, guys. It only happens once, and it's very effective. Like, it's how you use them. It's motivated by the story, and it at the moment that it happens, he's like going through the castle. He's emotional, and it is impactful at that moment, and they don't return to it. Thoughts about this blocking for camera stuff, J Money?
Well, I mean, you mean in terms of the diopter shot specifically, or do you mean just in general?
Either.
In terms of the diopter shot specifically, I do think that really worked well without seeming too contrived, or I think taking you out of the side of the movie, like we were talking about with Dangerous Method. It was such a wonderfully, almost, I guess it was a metaphorical shot. I mean, it's like him entering her mind space, him entering her dream in a sense, and also being powerless at the same time in terms of the scale. And I just loved the way that it was sort of lined up and you know the context between the two of them there together. In terms of blocking in general, you know, I don't necessarily think about that in terms of movies in general, so it's hard for me to comment about it. I certainly thought everything felt correct. Nothing felt forced. Nothing felt like it was out of place, and nothing felt like it shouldn't have happened.
But I mean, but if it wasn't blocked well enough, if it didn't feel cinematic enough, you would have noticed that.
Probably. I mean, I've certainly seen other, you know, plays that have been made into movies that definitely don't feel cinematic. This one, I think, really took the idea of moving you through an environment. Like, you know, it's interesting to me. I felt like I really understood the castle in a way that I don't think it would have understood in other places. I mean, I think that it actually really felt like you were in specific rooms and environments, and you could get the layout in a sense because it wasn't.
Yeah,
you know,
no, for sure. I almost felt like I had a blueprint by the end of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really understood the space they were working with, and it really contributed to, I think, the overall idea of them being together, you know, trapped in a sense in this one area.
Davey Joe, do you have any final thoughts on blocking?
I think you pretty much covered it.
All right, the other thing that came up in the screening was music. And there was a disagreement there as well, because you know, a couple people, their words were oppressive and heavy-handed with the music. And I actually thought it was perfect and suited material. There was a lot of Gregorian chant work going on, and of course, there was this from John Barry. I love it. All right, so you get a sense of that. That's the opening. Where are you guys? Now we have musical samples for you. Where I think it's perfect. I think it's suited the material really well. Where are you guys at with the music?
I definitely at the time I was watching it, I was like, this is cool. I like this a lot, but I also knew that it was going to be divisive with the audience because it's strong. I mean, it's definitely.
What was that word you used? I missed it.
I think it's gonna be divisive. I mean, I think that there's gonna be
divisive.
Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, however you want to pronounce it.
How do you pronounce that word, J Money? Break the tie.
That's not fair. I want to bring together us. I don't want to separate us. I don't want to separate us apart.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there are kids out there, you should know it's pronounced divisive. That's all I'm going to say.
JB, it goes both ways, man.
Okay.
All right.
J Money music.
I think that I guess I would say that I didn't seem distracted by the music, so in that sense, it certainly wasn't an issue for me. I remember the opening sequence being really long and powerful, and that's certainly where the score is. I think that you just played the part of, the title sequence there that stuck out to me. But beyond that, I don't really recall it being something that I was aware of.
Well, I mean, that's probably a good thing. A lot of composers would say that's their goal. I mean, I love the Gregorian chant type stuff. I've been listening to Gregorian chants all day, prepare for this moment, as J Money knows.
Yep.
Davey, why do you think it's divisive? Like, you just think it's
strong. It's strong, and it's.
But I mean, like, you think that, but J Money didn't notice it.
That blows me away. But that's cool. I mean, I think it speaks to how engrossed into this film he was and into the story. I knew that it was going to come up tonight, and I knew that I suspected someone. I guess it turned out none of us, but someone wouldn't like it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Interesting. But you're okay with it mostly, it sounds like.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh, okay, great. So the other thing that kept coming up was, in terms of being an issue, was the very ending. The very ending. I've got some audio. Hopefully, you guys can hear it. Let me try this again.
Well, put it this way: what changed at the end of the movie? What's different? What condition? What has changed at the end of the movie? It's different from the beginning. because we're basically just resetting. The only thing that
Do you guys hear that?
I did.
Okay, J Money, what do you think?
I mean, I love the fact that they were basically just resetting by the end of the movie. I like the fact that it ended the way it did, without really any strong change in terms of what was happening. I mean, obviously in history it changed anyway. I mean, we all, it's kind of a pointless. I guess to me, because it's historical, it's kind of pointless to actually show the change happen in that situation. We all know what's going to eventually happen, especially if you look it up. I had no problem with the idea of them resetting. The idea to me of this movie was that it was about a story of family, a broken family that remains broken ultimately,
Right, okay. But why do you have no problem with it resetting? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what?
Why do I have no problem?
Like, you have no problem. You like that it reset, but why?
Well, I don't think that it had to have changed. I mean, I guess to his point, it sounds like this person's saying that they're dissatisfied or they think that it was pointless, that there was no real.
No, I mean, like, I think it was just a frustration. Thinking in terms of like character arcs and things like that. Like it. Like, did they have arcs or did they not? And if they didn't, is that a bad thing?
Every character had a massive revelation during this movie. I mean, every character had to acknowledge and deal with certain circumstances in this movie, especially in that one scene where Henry is confronting all his children in Philip's bedroom. Everybody sort of has this personal revelation moment, right? I mean, everybody kind of goes through the motions, and certainly Eleanor does.
That's an important scene. I'm going to come back to that. Davy Joe, how do you respond to this viewer?
It's an interesting criticism. I don't know. I like it. Maybe it's because I smell sequel, guys. What do you think?
Well, the sequel's called Robin Hood,
which was not as bright, if you remember the Kevin Costner film.
Okay, now here's the thing about the ending, because I mean, like I said in the summary, that this is an annual thing. He lets her out for Christmas, and they spar, have verbal sparring, and the audience did get that impression that this was happening, annually. But I made the argument that something this year was different. Something this year made it different. What do you guys think that was? What made this year unique in terms of their verbal sparring?
Well, I guess I would assume because Henry is supposedly in love again, and that he actually does want to move forward in some different direction.
He's been in love several times over the course of their marriage. They're still married technically.
Yeah, but I would say that in terms of the year previous, when they all got together, he wasn't necessarily trying to wed Alice.
But why was he trying to wed Alice though?
I don't know. Why was he trying to wed Alice?
Because what was he trying to get from Alice by marrying her? Because he was happy just having her as a mistress, right?
I don't know. Well, I thought there was a point where he was also discussing how he wanted to move that forward.
Wasn't that part of the deal though?
He wanted the new heir, right?
He had to.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Now here we go. He wanted a new heir, which is another great line. When he's like, "Why are you gonna marry Alice?" He's like, "More sons," and she's like, "I would think that's the thing you would not want, the one thing you wouldn't want more of." But why does he all of a sudden need a new heir?
You mean from a practical sense, or why his character might feel that way?
His character, because he had an heir in the beginning of the movie.
Well, at one point he kisses all three of them off.
Yeah, but I guess.
And what happens to make him do that?
They all cut a deal with France.
Well, yes, and that's basically John betrays him. The one that he had all his hopes on betrays him for the first time, and I think that's the real difference here. And what makes this, because I mean, he had all his she always fought for Richard, he always fought for John, and then this year, John betrayed him, and then he's like,
yeah, I don't know.
What he's like.
But I feel like there was also a lot more about his the fact that he was also doing his own mortality in a very direct manner in this.
Oh, his age for sure, but I mean like
50s around.
And he would live for another 6 years. But I mean, like, I definitely feel like there was something about, like, that was the heartbreaking thing. And if you watch it, like, as soon as that happens, like, he's like starts wandering around the castle trying to figure out what to do. You know what I mean? Like, all his hopes and dreams. My interpretation is that he intends to, like, it's almost like, you know, by having John being so dim-witted, it's like, and by filling John's mind, it's like he's trying for immortality through John in his own way because he's so malleable.
Right.
And by this not happening, by John betraying him, by John having a mind of his own almost, and betraying him, which is like the worst thing you could have done to Henry II, he's like, oh shit, this is done. And he doesn't know what to do, and his solution's then, all right, starting over,
Right.
new kids.
I think that his main concern is his legacy is a really big issue throughout the entire movie, obviously. But I think that him and his relationship with Alice, though, is as much about that as is about him trying to recapture the glory of his youth in a lot of ways as well, right? I mean, I guess I feel like there's a lot of him trying to retread some of the happier moments of his life through that process. So I don't think it's necessarily.
I'm sure that's true of any older gentleman.
Absolutely. So I don't know if it's really disingenuous for him to just want to marry her for an heir. I guess I feel like that's also tied more directly to his emotional state.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's directly tied being betrayed by John. I don't think there's any question about that. Because I think that before then, he toes the party line. It's all about John. He's putting John loves me, and I love John, and John's going to be the king. Geoffrey's going to be the chancellor.
Do you think so, though? I don't know if I actually got that. I mean, I understood that he was throwing his support behind John, and he was hoping for John, but I don't think. I mean, especially, it felt to me like he was always unsure what was going to happen.
I mean, he knew John was an idiot.
Right.
But I mean, like, he had given up on Richard and Geoffrey entirely.
Sure.
And I don't think he seriously intended. I don't think the idea of having new sons at his age was practical to him. It wasn't practical even after the fact, but when John betrayed him, it became a necessity as far as he is concerned. I mean, that's my interpretation of it. But
which brother are you guys on? Which side of the brothers are you guys on? Which brother were you rooting for?
Well, see, that's tough with knowing Richard turned out okay as a king. Historically, it's hard not to root for Richard, I would think. You're a Geoffrey man, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I am definitely a Geoffrey man. That was a good call on your part. Very impressive.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you need to know J Money, watch The Lion of Winter. Does that make Davie our John?
Yes, it does.
Wow. Wow.
See, only if you've seen this movie will you guys understand this. Anyway, real quick, we're running out of time. Favorite scenes. You guys have favorite scenes, real quick?
Man.
No, I just kind of like the whole thing. And I know that that's a cop out.
I'll go. I got some stuff.
Okay.
The scene where he calls Eleanor's bluff and they go to get married with the bishop and everybody's lined up in that great hallway. Great scene. Great scene. The way that
that's a really good one.
Comes about.
Here's what the audience chose. Let me play you what the audience selected.
Resolution, maybe the Jane was. That's disappointing to me because there's some great scenes in this.
Tons, I would say.
I think the tapestry scene is amazing. And
so they really like this whole 20-minute sequence. Different, like almost Shakespearean, hiding behind tapestries and listening and who knows what. We're a knowledgeable family, all that sort of stuff. I like the scene when Henry and Eleanor, sort of reminisce, like they're like, and then it evolves into more sparring. It's almost like the movie in the context of that scene.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you guys have any? Before I pull up more photos, oh shoot. Okay, do you guys have any comments on the tapestry scene?
I think it was really well orchestrated. Oh, go ahead.
I think you're replying to your own echo.
Oh, sorry. I often do that. That's pretty much my entire life. I thought it was really well orchestrated, and also the fact that it was allowed to just kind of build upon itself. It was almost like there was a running gag quality to it because you knew what was going to keep happening. You could sort of sense how they were going to keep putting in all these extra players. But then there's also the sort of the reveal that happens for each of the relationships. I mean, the reveal that happens between Timothy Dalton, Philip II, and Richard is a pretty monumental reveal in this movie, which is also pretty progressive. I mean, I guess it was. I guess I was sort of surprised to see them actually acknowledge it that directly for a movie. At this point.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
David, Joe, anything? And for the audience, he's referring to their homosexuality. But go ahead, David, Joe.
No, I think that's a really good point. That's a really good point. That's a fun scene. It's got everything. It's got comedy. It's got just romance and heartbreak and everything else. But it's
I guess it does.
It's an amazing scene.
Awesome. Well, now things are about. If you thought that was intense, we covered a lot of ground, guys. We covered my whole outline. We never do, but it's time for the showdown. Adding sound effects now, guys. So it's classic.
That's really good.
You like that one?
Yeah.
I'm not gonna have a voice after this. So this is when we do our brackets. For those of you who watched the show before, for those of you that have not, you are about to get schooled by Davie Joe, who's gonna read the rules. Davie Joe!
All right. Seating criteria varies from bracket to bracket. Films are shown at JB-hosted screenings, and they need to be 15 years or older. Voters are eligible if they see both films within a 12-month period. Voters must see both films in JB's presence. JB is ineligible to vote. Unless the vote counts, he can break ties.
That's probably the worst that he's ever done it, ladies and gentlemen. So I apologize. Next week he'll do it with a little more zep.
Wow.
Zep?
Wow.
Zest. Sorry, man. It is what it is. So tonight it's the 60s bracket. We're doing the 60s bracket, which is the most completed bracket, actually, in terms of the first round. For those of you that Davie Joe appreciate this, we've got 24 of the 32 first-round matchups done, Davie Joe.
Wow, we're flying through this thing.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so 60s are almost done, and obviously with us doing 1966 this year at our year in review, that'll be a few more. So Lion of Winter is an 11 seed going up against one of the highest-grossing films of the 60s. Movie from 1960 or 61, is that? I can't read that.
60.
It is 60. Okay. Swiss Family Robinson, the Disney film, is up now, and I have some photos to show you guys, I believe. Where are you? There it is. So we went to a screening of Swiss Family Robinson in December of 2014 at the El Capitan here in Los Angeles, and they go all out for these screenings. I don't know if you guys have ever been. Have you guys ever been to the El Capitan in Los Angeles?
I have not.
No.
It's a Disney-owned theater. So here, like one Thursday a month, they show one of their classics, and they show Swiss Family Robinson. It was a fun night for sure, but maybe we'll hear about that a little later on. So Swiss Family Robinson from 1960. It goes up against The Lion in Winter. Let's see who gets to go first. I guess. Oh, wait a minute, J Money. You've never seen Swiss Family Robinson, is that right?
That's true, and I uphold tradition for this show. I still did not see the Swiss Family Robinson. But let me just say, the likelihood that The Lion of Winter would fall to the Swiss Family Robinson in my mind is pretty minimal. It feels pretty unlikely.
Davie Joe, did you rewatch Swiss Family Robinson for tonight's episode?
No, I watched it. I had never seen it before. I did watch it though.
Oh my gosh, Davie Joe, you get the gold star for the evening.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah. I hated it.
Yeah, I would have expected the opposite to happen, but you really came through for the team.
Yeah.
What did you think of Swiss Family Robinson?
Awful. Did not
Are you
like it
being
at all.
facetious?
Not at all. No, I hated it.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It's not good.
Joe has no soul.
Perhaps. No. It was really bad. I think essentially every aspect of it bothered me. I thought that
It was way too bright.
You would see bright's fine. It's outdoors. There would be these incredible things that they would build, and they would just appear. You wouldn't get to see any of how that happened. There was the music was just horrendous. It was like the worst Star Trek episode you've ever seen, and it was just cloyingly sweet to just abrasive and obnoxious. The kids, oh my God, I wanted that lion to eat that kid so bad, or the tiger, I guess.
Especially the girl/boy.
The girl/boy. All right, here's the deal. I get faking being the boy. I think it was a good plan, but I don't know why she's continuing to pretend to be a boy after they escape. Like, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
Dude, she doesn't want to get raped.
Sure, but I think that no pun intended, that ship had sailed by that time.
That pun was clearly intended.
Anyway, so no, I didn't like it. I think that you probably are at an advantage because you probably got to see it when you were a kid and it was fun and you liked it. But I'm just guessing.
It was fun. It was fun again watching it at the big screen at El Capitan.
All right, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man.
Why? Thank you. All right, let's see what let's see what our one of our audience members said about it. I might have written down the wrong time code for this, so let's hope I get it.
Oh, damn. I just think Lion and Winter is a better movie, even though I love Swiss Family Robinson.
It was a fun night, but I mean, like Swiss Family Robinson, like that girl in Swiss Family Robinson is worse than John.
Yeah. So I'm laughing at myself so much. So anyway, so there you have it. That was one of the voters, and that's pretty much how everybody felt. Lion and Winter does move on, and so moves on to the second round, which we have until October to do its second round matchup. It sounds like you guys are pretty much in agreement with this, and you feel pretty good about this winner.
Oh, it's clearly. And I'll tell you what, if Lion and Winter is an 11 seed, the top 10 have to be pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, bear in mind that it's Swiss Family, the box office returns play into it a big way as well.
Okay.
So
okay.
Swiss Family Robinson was a huge hit, and that needs to be taken into consideration.
And
one of the highest-grossing Disney films of all time, adjusted for inflation.
I think it was the highest-grossing film of 1960, and then they re-released it in '68, and it did very well again. I believe.
Yeah, for sure. So it was a huge. Don't underestimate the huge hit. I can't believe you wouldn't at least enjoy the ostrich race, but that's beside the point. We have to go. On our next classic movie discussion, watch out. We are going to discuss my personal favorite movie of all time, which if you've seen the show before, you already know what it is. But that's coming up in the next classic. But coming up in about 7 minutes, if we can get it done on time, is our freeform segment, the sound off. Tons of stuff that's going to happen. All right, we got Davey's diatribe, which he doesn't know what it's going to be about. And by the way, the sound off is pretty much all 2015 related stuff. So Davey's diatribe, and we're going to talk about some Twitter stuff. We're going to bring back a segment that we've only done once that was sort of popular. J Money has a segment tonight. And also, we're each going to do, they're going to muscle in my top 5 territory, and we're each going to do the top 5 films that we reviewed last year based on your Twitter question. So that's the top 5 for tonight. Top 5 2015 films that we reviewed, because almost none of them made our countdown of top 10 of the year. So that's the sound off. Lots to discuss, and we're going to do it in 7 minutes. We will see you shortly. Okay, bye.